We have a great group who will be with us this afternoon to discuss expanding reach through partnerships, identifying key regions, and understanding some untapped travel markets, and more. So if I could invite everybody to please join me on the stage, Siddhartha, Gautam, and Surya. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you. Lots to discuss. First, I'd like to just acknowledge that we were supposed to have Jeff Mumma from Delta Airlines on stage with us today, and understandably, because of the accident that occurred involving a Delta Connection jet earlier at Toronto Pearson, Jeff is unable to attend. I think we all would like him to know we are sending positive thoughts to him, his colleagues. I think it's a credit to Delta and the training their pilots and cabin crew have, that they got everybody out of the airplane, a full load, 76 passengers, out safely. And if you haven't seen it, the airplane ended up flipping upside down. It was most unusual, but we are very thankful that everyone got out of that incident. So let's start by talking about this very different world that we have, and how you as commercial leaders are expanding into new areas. Let's start with this. How is the air landscape, the connectivity, Siddhartha, this is for you and Surya, how is the connectivity landscape evolving in your regions? And are you getting the level of collaboration you would like from, whether it's your home countries or the countries your airlines would like to serve, in terms of access to airports, access to the slots you need, and so on?
Well, Henry, thanks for putting me on the spot first on that one. It's always a tough balancing act in that space. But we've been fortunate to operate in a market that has seen tremendous growth. We're far ahead of where we were pre-pandemic numbers already. And the fleet expansion that we're seeing, as well as our competitors in the market, are kind of testament to the long-term growth that we're seeing. We're quite optimistic about the infrastructure development and the investments and the support that we're getting from, well, definitely the regulators and the ministry in that respect, as well as from airports. I think there has been a recognized need with the increased growth for secondary airports in the country. We haven't had one so far, unlike if you take London, for example, with 5 airports in the proximity of the metropolitan area. None of the cities in India, including Delhi and Bombay, despite being among the 10 largest domestic passenger sectors globally, have a secondary airport. We will be the first airline from the 1st of March to operate from what is technically now an Air Force base, Hindon, in Delhi. But in the course of this financial year, Jewar Airport also opens up as a secondary airport in the National Capital Region. The Navi Mumbai Airport will also be opening up. And so we see a lot more growth coming from that, and a lot more competition coming in from the airport space, because monopolies are not great from a UDF perspective and a pricing perspective for airlines as well. And the ability to connect many more passengers from areas and decongest the infrastructure towards the airports and the cities in that. So tremendous growth. We've been very fortunate to see that, definitely, and we do think a lot more investment coming in over the course of the next couple of years.
Thank you. Sir, what about in Oman or the countries that you are targeting as top priority?
Yeah, so connectivity is an ecosystem partners, right? So that means you have airports, you have airlines, and most importantly, the tourism boards should also support us. So I'll give the context from an Oman perspective, which is relevant for the audience as well. So we work closely with Oman airports and tourism ministries whenever we try to launch a new station. So last month we launched Rome. So we have worked closely with Oman airports and tourism boards to make sure that whenever we launch, we go collectively in the market to promote it, to make sure that the airline gets profitable, right? So if the airport supports with incentive, the tourism board supports with passenger and airline development funds and other things, and the airline does its own things as well. So collectively, it helps to grow the connectivity, and this phenomenon can be applied to any new route you want to launch, right? So you will build that ground up in line with your ecosystem of partners to reach to scalability and grow that specific route or a market.
Okay, great. What I'd like to now talk about is commercial innovation. We heard a little bit earlier today from Flyer and Riyadh Air, excuse me, about this move towards offers and orders, this world of retailing that is starting to hit the point of reality. And I'm just curious how you all see airlines taking advantage of it, how you all may be taking advantage, Gautam, certainly from the standpoint of IBS, what you all are seeing your customers doing here. It's exciting, but it's daunting. It is perhaps one of the biggest changes to the industry in terms of how we operate commercially and technologically since the advent of the internet as a viable commerce channel. So, Gautam, would you start us off with this, please? Yeah.
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think there's if you take a step back and you look at the digital economy and you look at other industries that have used, that have reacted to the needs of a digital consumer, you'll find a lot of industries where commercial innovation has been the byproduct of great technology. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity for the airline industry to take some of those learnings. There are a lot of examples. There's retail banking that is delivered completely virtually, complicated products and services with great customer experience and a frictionless customer experience. Everybody talks about Amazon. Everybody talks about Uber and Grab here. So I think the airline industry has an opportunity to benefit from tremendous commercial innovation, but the prerequisite for that is a technology refresh, because most of these digital innovators have refreshed their technology stacks from to be more responsive to what the customer needs are. So I think some of the changes that need to happen are to move from some of these monolithic, siloed technology stacks that are not built for open ecosystems and move towards modern technology stacks. And once you do that, the commercial innovation will come through a few levers. It can come through better productivity. So, you eliminate a lot of processes, you eliminate information asymmetry, you're able to get closer to your customer, you're not working through silos. And then on top of that, if you overlay machine learning and generative AI, you're able to price better, you're able to get better bundles dynamically, you're able to get better ancillaries, cross-sell. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity to deliver commercial innovation, but it has to be on the back of technology refresh. And I think we're just on the start of that journey, and it's going to be an exciting few years ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard that it could be a decade-plus long transition for the industry to complete this. Siddhartha, Surya, where are your airlines with this? Are you looking at offers and orders? Are you looking at replacing your PSS for this? Obviously Air India Express as an LCC is very retail focused, but and Oman Air is very full service, but there's still different ways of creating and delivering value that are non-traditional compared to the way we've used to do things.
Yes. So I can answer on the both sides, right? So I've lived LCC life where there is no, it's a ticketless airline. You're retailing, and openness of the systems is extremely robust to innovate. Okay. On the offer order side, the current context is everyone knows what, no one knows how, right? So what is a rosy picture now. Everyone knows, okay, what is offer order system? How do we decentralize the PSS? How we decentralize the PSS is still unknown. It's still a black box. So IATA themselves, we are a part of the IATA consortium too. So they themselves say that by 2030, only half of the airlines will transition to offer order. Okay, so decentralizing PSS has its own advantages and disadvantages, right? So it gives you a more openness in choosing your tech stack and everything, but when you decentralize, the quality of data is deteriorated because every decentralized stack has a different schema. So that means instead of running an airline, you're running a data center, right? You have to unify all these schemas and make sure that you get realistic insights to run your commercial business, right? So, as I said, what is great? How still needs to be answered. And the offer order mechanism at this point of time, the offer order management platforms which are available in the market are not up to the scale of the B2C functionality, right? B2C functionality is the complex functionality on your booking engine. So is your existing offer order management systems in the market are capable of delivering that is still unknown. If you match it, they are currently leveling up with the B2B travel agency GDS kind of functionality, which is simple shop and book, but not innovating between the simple shop and book on a B2C landscape. So it's still at the nascent stages. From an Oman Air perspective, we are still getting to know how a lot before we try to test the waters.
I mean, we're fortunate that way because we're not on the GDS, PSS, we're with Navitaire. So to answer your question, we're not looking to change. We think the flexibility that offers us enables us to maximize profitability because we're operating in a very price-sensitive market. And a lot of the discovery of the price happens on an intermediary channel, whether that be a meta search engine or an online travel agency. Therefore, fundamentally, we're always competitive on price with competition, which means obviously the margins on the fare alone are constrained.
Right.
So the profitability is really driven by the ancillaries that we can sell, and most of that ancillary goes straight to the bottom line.
Right.
So for us, it's really about being able to maximize the potential from the ancillary sales to enable the highest personalization of offers, pricing, and products across the consumer journeys. And I think coming back to the information asymmetry that Gautam was speaking about, I think that becomes one of the biggest differentiators because going forward, if you're leveraging data, whether it's for AI or for personalization, the airline which has that first-party data and is able to use that to personalize the offering and to maximize the ancillary sales automatically stands to gain an advantage and to move away from the need for intermediaries whose core reason essentially relies on information asymmetry. Once that information asymmetry goes out of the equation, the transaction costs come down between the consumer and the airline. And so you extract much more value, which is otherwise going into an ecosystem that you don't really need to have and has been there because of legacy systems for many, many years, as both Surya and Gautam spoke about.
Right. So, a question for you, and I want, again, the airlines first, and Gautam, I want to come to you. You mentioned the D word, data. Data is one of my favorite four-letter words. Do you have the data that you need, whether it is commercial data, operational data, customer data, anything else? Is it accessible enough to you to do the, not just access, but the manipulation to do personalization to your satisfaction so that you can retail? And what are the challenges you face in doing that better?
Okay. In airline, data is there. Okay. It's available, but it is not available to be consumed in a fashion that you will not just measure the analytics, you are moving from analytics to insight management, right? Insights is more valuable for commercial performance rather than analytics, right? You see the numbers, it's greatly visualized on Power BI. What is the insight you get to actually change something in your process to deliver superior value, okay? The bottleneck is across the three pillars, right? So that means data to realistic visualization, and that visualization to insight management, okay? So the seamless tunneling between the three pillars needs to be there. Every airline has a different stage of bottleneck from data to visualization. So for me at Oman Air, we are having good tunnel between the data to visualization. What we are actually focusing on is how can we actually use the streamlined data sources for generating better commercial insights so that we can use that to deliver incremental value. This is where we are focusing on, right? And try to enrich the data further. Can we bring in other, other systems like loyalty and other things into the data pool and enrich the data such that your insight management becomes more superior?
We have the data. We're using it for personalization of pricing, predominantly for ancillary pricing, less so for fares. I think the challenge comes in two respects on the use of that data. One is our inability to personalize pricing and offers on intermediary channels, because obviously we don't want to share, let's say, member data or profile data with the travel partner who's making the booking. And you need that connect to be able to say, yes, I know that Henry's traveling with me and he likes a window seat towards the front, but his propensity to pay is 20% less, for example, than someone else. So charge that right price. And without sharing the data with the intermediary, that becomes a constraint. The other aspect that we're working on now quite actively is how do you enable the data which is there, which is being used in a fairly robust manner to customize and personalize digital journeys, to actually enable personalization of service either in flight, where we don't have connectivity, or at the airport, where there are systems and service providers such as ground handling agents who are not empowered with the same kind of tools. And we're being able to do that with a bit of technology. I mean, in-flight mobile POS services, using some traditional hacks like SSRs, etc., to empower some of that personalization. A lot of the advantage I think that we've also had is because we're part of the Tata Group in India and we're listed on the Super App, the loyalty system that we're part of right now has an ecosystem of coalition partners across e-commerce, jewelry, hospitality, airlines, grocery, etc. And we're able to source the data and the personalization, including family and friends data, transaction data, across this ecosystem of non-airline partners from about 180 million members. So it's a very robust ecosystem which we're able to tap into. I think that the game is going to be in how do you ensure that you're giving the value back to the consumer for that data, because over a period of time, I spoke on the earlier panel as well, I think consumers will begin to trust only those brands and share their data with those brands whom they know will actually deliver value to them rather than trying to monetize that data for extracting an extra buck out of them. So credibility of the right brands and the right players will begin to play an important part as well.
Interesting. Gautam. Yes, sir.
If I could just add,
Yeah.
great insights. And I think from our engagements globally with airlines of different business models, I would be able to give you different answers. In more direct-to-consumer models, like LCCs, you largely do not have a lot of information asymmetry. You have direct control over pricing. You don't have a lot of intermediaries that create opaque sections. So you are largely in control of at least things like pricing, elasticity, and you have some flexibility to optimize some of those parameters with the data you have. In full service carriers with large components of indirect distribution, there are so many opaque spots that you are limited in your ability to optimize the pricing, and you're also limited in the ability to personalize because of those black spots. Now, I think as you move more and more towards direct-to-consumer models, your sample sets are going to get richer. But even now, with a lot of the full-service carriers, we've been able to optimize certain components with the data we have on the offer side. For example, with correlations with ancillaries, being able to create the right bundles, make the right associations with even with the small data sets. But I think you need to move towards a completely open system where an efficient system of data to be able to get the maximum value and have the right kind of insights. But I think it's a journey we're taking. Yeah.
I want to build on what you said because, ancillaries are clearly important. As Siddhartha said, at Air India Express, that flows almost directly to the bottom line and has a huge impact on the airline's profitability. You think about airlines as retailers, as merchants, and whether it's an airline product or a third-party product, there's so much that airlines can do, and there's so many opportunities, new opportunities to do this. There's blended travel, business and personal travel on the same trip, family travel, different generations, whatever it may be. Do we need to rethink how we go to market with this? We don't have the advantage as airlines of traditional retailers, whether it's grocery or apparel or electronics or anything. They have stock keeping units which make it easier to track what people buy. But research we've shown shows that nearly 20% of airlines don't even track the type of fare a customer buys, let alone the optional stuff. And they don't always associate it with the customer, or they can't. So what do we need to do to tap into the creativity, but to also be more effective as business people and as businesses? Don't all answer at once.
So, I think you're absolutely right on the customer side of things. And most of what we've done so far has been on personalizing either pricing or products based on information about the individual. But what you also notice when you dig into the data is that the same individual, depending on their purpose of travel, as well as who they're traveling with, and the same booker, depending on who they're booking, actually has a very different propensity for consumption of price sensitivity on fares as well as on ancillaries, which is much more nuanced. And it's very early stages to be able to start personalizing on that. But to give you an example, we offer, because we sell meals and don't give them complimentary in economy class, a full-service carrier would offer a vegetarian or non-vegetarian or a special service meal. I need to increase the take-up rate of the meals, and so we offer 20 different varieties of meals, including 15 different hot meals. As Alok mentioned in the morning, I think we have ovens in the flights because we recognize that that's a big differentiator. Now, when you look at what people consume in terms of meals, whether it's at breakfast, which sector they're traveling in from, which region they're traveling in from. So if you look at our passenger segments traveling in from the Middle East, for example, the consumption of the nature of the menu is very different from what I would see in some domestic sectors. In the east of India, it's quite different. So fish, for example, has a higher take-up rate on those sectors. Middle East and Kerala, we see more non-vegetarian, especially mutton biryani, selling more, right? But domestic sectors, depending on which sector it is quite different. And so getting into that level of granularity requires us to be able to build that level of personalization, not just based on the consumer or the customer profile, but actually on segments like time of day, but also on clickstream data. So how are people browsing and moving through that ecosystem? To give you a couple of insights, for instance, we noticed that the highest seat take-up rate happens to be for students and senior citizens when the person who's booking for them is not actually the traveler. So it's typically when somebody's booking, for example, for their parents, they're more likely to book seats for them than if that senior citizen were traveling themselves and booking themselves because they're more price conscious. When people are booking for their children, they're more likely to buy ancillaries like meals and seats than when they're booking for themselves. So the same consumer can have a different behavior depending on who they're booking, when they're booking, and what their purpose of travel for.
So, I mean, retailing is knowing what to sell, right? So, taking the same analogy from your grocery, retailer knows what to sell. Merchandising is how to sell, right? If you know what to sell, doesn't mean that you're successful, right? You really need to gamify the entire merchandising flow such that the right products are placed in the right rack, okay? In airline, the right rack is right page, right? So that drives what is the take-up rate of the product as well, okay? So at Oman Air, I've just moved in 6 months ago. Oman Air earlier, they used to have modularized seats. So that means the passenger needs to go into that module to see the seat map, okay? When we demodularize it and showed it to them, immediately we saw a triple-digit take-up rate on seats, right? Earlier we were on single digits, and then we had triple-digit incremental seat take-up rate, okay? So this is, as I said, you have seats, that is retailing. You are selling it in a right merchandising flow is making sure that your retailing philosophy is generating value for the business. So again, the person of the user, if I touch Siddharth's point of person of the user, right? So here we have FIT travelers and corporate travelers when you are a network airline. So we fly from London to Manila to multiple points. So for corporate travelers, what we have started engaging with tourism authorities and other things in Oman is to create a stopover product, right? So maybe the transit time is 8 hours, they can just hop on and explore Oman, right? Oman is still an unexplored market from tourism perspective, though a lot of people transit. So 2024, the Oman airport handled over 14-15 million passengers. How many of them have really explored Oman? Unknown, right? So we are creating curated products from a retailing perspective to cater to specific set of audiences who want to explore Oman during their stopover. So you create products and you create robust merchandising flow such that you will generate value of your entire retailing strategy.
Gautam, you work with a lot of different airlines from different parts of the world. How are they approaching thinking or rethinking their ancillaries to be better at the retailing side? And what advice are you providing to your customers to help them take advantage of this evolution?
I think, as we discussed earlier, the economics of the airline is such that an uptick of ancillaries makes a very material difference to the profitability. So the seat by itself has less of a bearing on profitability. It's what you sell around it. Therefore, the choice of ancillaries, the bundling of ancillaries, becomes extremely important. And if you make a material difference to the uptake of ancillaries on a progressive, with the same load factors and the same yields, you can make a very material difference to the profitability. So therefore, the context becomes very important. When you, some great examples of different parts of India, as to what kind of culinary preferences play a part, that kind of intelligence is really important to be able to sell those ancillaries. So you have to make the right correlations, understand the right context. And now with the kind of algorithms we have today, there's a lot of great processing power to be able to continuously learn on moving that up, right? So start with the persona of the customer, getting some good intel around, what this person likes, why is that person traveling, and superimpose on top of that the sectors they're traveling to and what is relevant and what is useful. And then you start making those associations and creating those bundles. The next step is how do you price those bundles? Now, it's not a binary outcome. It is a continuous fail, learn cycle, right? So you have to create a statistical type of model to be able to run those situations, and you will see very tangible difference. It's very easy to measure this because same flight, same time, what is the uptick? Load factor is the same, yields the same, what has changed? Then you can isolate the difference, and then you learn, right? So I think there's so much data intelligence that can be applied to make this right. Those are some of our learnings from running various, various proofs of concepts or running various engagements with our clients.
There's something else I'd like you to start us off with, and that is the challenge that airlines are going to face as they embrace newer technologies but have partners or interline partners, or maybe it's travel agencies or others who are slower to adopt. How should they be thinking about managing this split world reality that is about to affect them?
Right, I think, you take any major transformation, and this whole digital retailing is a transformation. It is a metamorphosis into something very different. You look 5 years from now, you'll see it's completely different from where it was. In any major transformation, you will have naysayers, you will have laggards, you'll have early adopters, you'll have disruptors, you'll have innovators. That is just the reality of it. Now, when you have this kind of a fragmented setup with different motives, then there are really two binary reasons why someone would do this. One is, this is actually an existential threat. There's no other way to look at it. Today, if you look at the digital consumer that is watching something with a Netflix UX, going into Amazon and buying something, and then going to Uber and purchasing something, their expectations are so high that they're not going to come and say, hey, but you know what, I'm going to reset my expectations when I buy a ticket. They're going to say, hey, you know what, your UX is not there. It's a nightmare for me to go through this transaction, and they're not going to be quiet about it. If they have a bad experience, they're going to talk about it, and you can't contain it. So this is an existential threat. If you do not move to being a best-in-class digital retailer, chances are you will not exist, you will lose market share, or you will bleed a slow death. That is really the stick.
That's pretty harsh. I mean, evolve or die. That's what you're saying.
No. So let me give you the counter side of the same argument, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other part of it is the opportunity. This is a single-digit margin business at its best. But herein lies the technology to be able to drive commercial innovation we've talked about. You can use AI models to drive productivity, self-service. You can drive machine learning models to price better. You can sell more ancillaries. So I think both sides of the argument are fairly compelling for people to make change. And you will find that there will be a snowball effect every year with people aligning to one or both, or some form of both. So, I mean, obviously both ends of the spectrum are extreme, but the answer lies somewhere in the middle.
What should we have done differently? Knowing now what we do, if we could go back 10, 15 years, whatever it was, when these conversations about NDC and retailing first began, what should we have thought about doing differently than we did?
I mean, hindsight is 20/20. So I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, as they say in the U.S. But I would think, coming from a technology background, I would if I know everything I know today, and if I could go back and do something differently, I would architect my systems very differently. Make them more modular, make them more open, create a free flow of information across the entire chain, try to create flexible architectures to be able to expand to third parties and thereby provide a much richer experience to my customer. These are some of the things I would do differently.
Should we have said decades ago, it's time to sunset the PSS and move on to something different? No?
That's
Why?
a little harsh, but
So as I said, will you think about sunsetting the PSS? 10 years ago, the answer would be no, right? Because the PSS architecture has evolved over a period of time. When was a fully cloud-native platform as a solution, PSS have evolved. It was just 2 years ago. At least from an LCC perspective, Flydeel was the first airline to fully deploy platform as a solution of PSS. So that means there is a utility enhancement, there is a technological enhancement, right? When you want to decentralize the entire PSS and try to move to a technologically and functionally enabled platform, is maybe 10 years down the lane, right? But what will hunt you now is immediately delivering commercial value, which is most needed for the airline, right? Airline runs on a cash-intense business. So that means you need to generate cash to run the airline, right? So you have to have a fine balance between what is the technological leapfrogging I would do, which generates incremental value now and also helps me to scale it up when it is needed, right? So as Gautam was referring to scalable architectures, is you need to define what is scalable architecture now, such that you will spend time and effort now to generate value, as well as when you need it, it is scaling up by itself, right? So the thought process is more of a, addressing the near-time goals of running the business, and also catering to the needs of needs of sustainable growth. So both has to be taken in a balanced view. It's not, okay, I will only spend money on technological leapfrogging versus, okay, I'm still loss-making, right? So you will have to have a balanced view in both.
Okay. So let me ask, when we are thinking about this whole shift towards retailing and towards delivering value to travelers, what is, how far can we go with personalization? What should we simply say, just because retailer X or bank X or whatever does this, doesn't mean we have to go as far? Or should we not accept that type of limitation?
So, yeah, you can, I will put it in a statement, right? You can go as far as you can until it is revenue inefficient, okay, and cost impacting, right? So we should make sure that it is not revenue inefficient. So you personalize it to an extent where the user opens his mobile app, and because based on his previous searches outside the mobile app, you show him a destination and his preferred timing on the schedule, you will show the same flight and say that, okay, you click now, we have all your saved details of your preferences and your payments, we will send you a ticket. It means one single click checkout. You can go to an extent, but is that relevant for everybody? As I said, is it revenue inefficient is the most important, fine hairline difference between whether you want to hyper-personalize to an extent where it is revenue inefficient, or you want to have a balanced view saying that, okay, I will personalize it to an extent that I'm not impacting my average order values, I'm not impacting my conversion rates, I'm not impacting my cost per acquisition for acquiring that user, right? So, yeah, that should be a typical, 3 metrics which should fall in place, such that you will find a sweet spot where neither of it get impacted, and whatever you do having a positive impact on all these 3 metrics.
I've read that Amazon said 60% of the merchants or the products sold on its site are from merchants who are using the Amazon platform as theirs, that they're basically a backbone. Arguably, airlines are backbones for third parties. And I hear you when you talk about something having to generate enough revenue. But can and should airlines perhaps be more creative and more open to working with third-party organizations, whether it's sightseeing tours or ground transfers or insurance, lodging, whatever it might be, so that you can be more of a travel company, if you will, and help that customer have a great journey, from the moment they leave home until the time they return?
Yes, okay. By default, airline is on itself a marketplace, right? Because we have the metal, but we get multiple partners in the ecosystem, starting from cleaning the aircraft until selling payments. Everyone is a different partner in the ecosystem, right? So by itself, we are a marketplace. But how do we exploit the individual capability to deliver superior value needs to be addressed. So every airline wants to onboard third-party products such that it brings in technology to make money. Okay, airline is not in creating technology products. We know how to use it, how to exploit the specific third-party technology, whether it can be a payments, whether it can be an ancillary product, to make money. But we are not in an expertise of building products, right? So Gautam can build a great offer order management suite, which will help us to realize value, but we are not in the game of building the suite itself, right? So we will always be an enabler for third-party products as a marketplace, Amazon kind of a marketplace in an ecosystem, which will help us to deliver value, which can improve our business.
If I could just chime, do you mind if I just chime in there?
Yeah, please.
So I think that's a great point. I think, going back to the digital consumer, to create a level of stickiness, you want them to think of it more as an experience as opposed to a ticket. And thereby, your universe expands in terms of what you can offer. At the same time, all the things you offer, these are third-party products. You can offer it, but then the moment it gets converted to an order, servicing it becomes very complicated. You start doing insurance and hotel rooms and so on. The level of complexity to be able to service that order if there's a change or a disruption, it requires a much higher level of technological sophistication. So you have to get the plumbing right before you get to that stage. But it is absolutely necessary to get the infrastructure right, and then you expand. But the most important thing is it has to be a frictionless experience. You throw all these things at a traveler, and you're not able to service it, it will create a much bigger impact. That is more than anything you make through the incremental profit from those components.
I think I agree with that in the sense that, and I add one more thing to that is I don't think the answer is the same for every airline. It goes back to some of the fundamentals of saying, what is the core competence that you have as an airline? What have you built over the years? And how do you choose to define yourself? I think we do a disservice to ourselves if we continue to define ourselves as solely being in the transportation industry. Now, there are some airlines, AirAsia is a good example, and we had a joint venture in AirAsia India with that, which has been able to pivot to defining themselves as a technology company in some way, whether it's ride-sharing services or food, etc. But at the same time, we must remember that I think the margins, and if you look at how things have played out over the course of the last 3-4 decades, if we think we're in the service industry, which is actually where the margins are, and where you're able to differentiate yourself from competition, and we've done a disservice to ourselves by commoditizing airlines to a large extent over the last 4 decades. If you look at the revenue per average seat kilometer, it hasn't really changed to the same extent as many other industries. If you compare it to say, the price of a cup of coffee, 30 years ago. And what coffee, which used to be a commodity 30 years ago, has been able to do by redefining itself as an experience, and whether it's the Starbucks or the cafes of the world, in essentially selling what used to be a commoditized product, but layering it on with an experience, which is where the margin really comes in, then you have a lot of potential not just to make margins, but also to differentiate yourselves from the competition in the same space. And the crux of it really lies in that, is to say, how do we go back to some of the heyday without the increase in the costs, obviously, but in being able to provide real value to the consumer and not just an A to B, which is replicable.
So I want to build on that a little bit by talking about points, loyalty, all of that. How should airlines think about evolving loyalty programs, knowing that retailing is coming about, so that they boost the revenue streams, that they increase the customer engagement, that they contribute to lifetime value, and that you help create the relationship you want, that it's not as transactional, it's not just people gaming the system and so on, that there's, loyalty is an emotion. So what do we need to think about doing to evolve our loyalty programs so that you have that sense of emotion and that the customer is willing to do business with your airline, even if it's not the most convenient or the least expensive,
Well,
that it meets their needs?
I think, again, it goes back to the same thing. If you define loyalty as only being a program, and the program as being defined by the value of the points that you're giving the consumer, you're going to be stuck in an endless downward cycle where either a competitor or an intermediary will be able to give more transactional value to the consumer. When we came on as part of the Tata New Pass program, and as we defined the roadmap of how Air India Express and Air India might work together on the revamped Maharaja Club program, we're looking at how we deliver real value to the consumer, which is beyond the transaction in terms of the points and not just the offers that we're giving. I dare say we're the first airline in the world which has got a loyalty program currently in place which does not have a frequent flyer number. So we identify the customer at the back end by the combination of the first name, the last name, and the mobile number. And that unique combination allows us at the time of login or even at the time of inputting the passenger details to drive the personalization without having to go back to the flyer and ask them to identify themselves to us, because as soon as you do that and as soon as you ask the consumer to define themselves by a number, by nature of that user experience, you're making it a transaction relationship and saying, yeah, you're just another number to me, and I will give you a certain number of points back for that number. But if you're able to customize the experience by saying, I recognize who you are as your name, and you have flown many times with me before, and these are what your preferences are, then you're creating a lot more value, and it has to be innate in the way in which you deliver that value, and not just in terms of saying it, but demonstrating it in the user experience as well.
So from Oman Air perspective, the growth of loyalty to deliver a superior customer lifetime value comes from your wider range of accrual options and what is the additional benefits every time they buy, right? Because wider range of options, what we are looking at, we are joining One World, right? So the customer can accrue on multiple One World Alliance partners. And every time they try to book on Oman Air, they get free additional baggage, free seat selection, and these kind of options, which is an instant gratification on every purchase. Okay, so both of it will add it up to a higher customer lifetime value and retention.
Okay. Gautam, any perspective from you?
I think,
from your folks
you
at
talked
IBS?
about lifetime customer value and generating better economics for the airline. Those are the two main tenets of any loyalty program. It's extremely vital to the success of a program. You look across the market and you see that there's a varying degree of success on those parameters, because and having worked with some of the largest loyalty programs in the world, we see that a lot of loyalty programs are largely focused on customer acquisition. How do you sign in the next member, as opposed to how many of those members are really active? If you look at the registered members to active members, the ratio is actually not very encouraging. And therein lies the deterioration both in customer lifetime value and the economics. I think some of the most successful programs, if you look like the Qantas program, you look at Air Canada, you look at Skywards, they have a very high velocity of number of transactions. And that comes through relevance, that comes through them realizing they want to transition from an airline program to a lifestyle program. Avianca is another example of that. And thereby, they are providing more relevant options to use the points, increasing the customer engagement, thereby generating more stickiness and lifetime value, and thereby the economics are improving. And then some of them have even taken it further, where they've delivered new business models with co-branding cards and so on. And with that, they're able to capture more data around what is this person spending on, and then going into new areas. And it becomes a nice vicious cycle of profitability and stickiness, right? So I think many airlines are in different steps of that journey. And I think there's tremendous potential to create both stickiness, but I think the most important thing is we need to improve the velocity, all right? That will kind of get into a nice cycle.
Okay, great. We are unfortunately out of time. Red light's blinking. So I want to thank you all for these great insights, Surya, Gautam, Siddhartha. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. My next session is going to start in the track 1 session with the folks from Cathay Pacific, followed by a panel. So hope to see some of you there. Gentlemen, thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.